Hello, friends, and welcome again to another edition of the Pittsburgh Steelers Show on the SteelerFury.com network. This is a continuing coverage of the pre-draft extravaganza. Tonight, we're picking up in the middle of our Build a Big Board part of our Steelers mock draft war room. So in the previous episode, we went over quarterbacks, defensive tackles, running backs, wide receivers, edges, and offensive linemen. And tonight, we go through the rest. This is part 2 of our 3-part Steelers Draft Mock War Room episodes of the pre-draft extravaganza. So without further ado, here's the rest of the mock draft board building. All right.
Final stretch.
We're almost there. We'll be able to. I think what we're going to do is then just knock it down to the purple players and figure out which ones we're going to target. And I don't think we need to do more than that. And maybe overnight I'll put them into sort of a board form of where they're expected to go, and we can figure out what to do from there. But yeah, I think we're in pretty good shape, guys. Not bad. A lot of good knowledge that you're sharing, so I appreciate that. I've been, I mostly operate a vacuum because I'm afraid to tell anybody about any players that I like until all these mock drafts are over. Because I'm like super crazy. Like Corey and I have an understanding the last couple of years that we share with each other and try not to poach each other's players. But just for those of you listening at home, we don't even tell Jeremy. We have a separate thread for text. Like,
yeah, I know you do.
Occasionally, like a guy will get mentioned on our group thread with the three of us, but it's always Coy. And then when it's really somebody we're into, then the Corey and I are all talking about it. And I to Corey's credit, I have another person that drafts with us that I text with often about prospects, and he will poach the shit out of my guys. From you know who you are. So yeah, I haven't learned my lesson yet. I keep forgetting, who I'm chatting with, when he brings up stuff.
There's multiple times a year where either me or Jeremy will just send like some crazy play from like a prospect into the thing, and then Will text me and say like, motherfucker, like Ricky White.
Yeah.
Ricky White that happened with, where I sent something, I was like, oh yeah, I love Ricky White. And Jeremy's like, oh yeah, I do too. And Will's like, you motherfucker.
Yeah.
It can't keep. There's only so many secrets you can keep, but I would be the general manager who gave zero information to anybody except for information that was not accurate, or, like even this, like, shout out to Draft Professor, whose YouTube show we're going to be on this weekend. And that's where the draft is that we're doing on this weekend. And you'll be able to see the replays by the time you see this episode. But yeah, like they had me on in September talking about small school players, and the guys I mentioned Marcus Weir, from Montana State, and then suddenly, like within 3 weeks, everybody was drafting Marcus Weir on Draft Professor mocks. So I was like, all right, I'm just gonna, like, if it's somebody I really really care about, I'm gonna hold on to as a sleeper. Like, you just can't tell anybody. I feel bad for guys like Emery Hunt, because it's just like by the time he puts the name out there, it's takes off, has its own life. Anyway, all right. So tight end fullback. For me, I'll start. For me, I know that they won't. They're very unlikely to replace Pat Freiermuth, right? But I feel like if you at least had a guy as your number 3 or number 4, you're Arthur Smith. You're going to trot out tight ends. You should be playing 4 tight ends or H-backs, right? And mix and match. Everybody's got a slightly different style and a different skill set, and you mix and match them with what you want to do on the field, right? So I feel like I only really wanted to highlight players that I thought would add something, and to that end, I was like, they got to be a better blocker than Donald Parham, because Parham, I think is a very good receiver and may find a role with the Steelers, but he's not somebody who's going to be a big blocker. He's a move tight end. He's more like Harold Fannin than he is like Heath Miller, right? But ideally, I think you want a tight end that's a good blocker, who also brings you something as a pass receiver. And if you can be a better blocker than Pat Freiermuth and a better receiver than him, then I think you got a chance to eventually make it so that they could wean themselves off of Freiermuth a little bit. So the 3 guys that I highlighted in red here: Thomas Fidone from Nebraska, former 5-star recruit, really just had injury problems and kind of just came on late, but he's maybe the best guy that can play inline who's a good blocker and a good receiver. Like if you're looking for a traditional type tight end with some juice, he's one of the very few that college football is not known for producing those guys really. He's one of them. Joshua Simon is a mystery to me why no one is interested in him. I guess it's because he's a year older. He's 20, 23 or 24 or something. But here's a catch he made in practice at East West Shrine game that was like he was jumped like 40 inches off the ground and used his full extension to catch a ball on the sideline and toe tap. And I just thought, how do you have a guy like that who's really was known at South Carolina for being a blocking tight end to make plays like that? I fully endorse if someone like that comes around, but I think Malik Carr is the guy. Used to be at Michigan State, transferred to Houston. He's like a 270-pound tight end who ran I think the second fastest time of any tight end in the class. And it isn't just about, it's just like you can see it on tape when he is lined up in line and runs up the seam. He gets to that linebacker, like past the linebacker level, faster than anybody. It's like even like guys like Tyler Warren, who are arguably fast, big guys lining up, in a sort of like a move tight end position, do not get past linebackers like that. Tyler Warren's good at it, deceptive because he's a big dude as well. But Malik Carr has juice, man. His get off is great. He has vertical speed, but he's a 270-pound guy that blocks the hell out of people. Great hands. I don't know if there was an issue with like him leaving Michigan State, if like he had some kind of a problem there, or there's nothing online that I can find that he has red flags, but it sort of has that feel to it. Like he was so good there and suddenly he's gone and he went to a team where they didn't use him as much. Not really sure what any of that's about, but in terms of what a player is capable of, he has the highest ceiling of capability of anybody in the class. That includes Tyler Warren. That's my bold statement. I'll throw it to you, Jeremy.
Well, if we were going to be replacing, Freiermuth, if we wouldn't have signed him to an extension, if we were going to let him walk, after this past year, I would have been very happy drafting Mason Taylor. I just like that kid. He's an incredible athlete, and if you don't know, he's the son of Hall of Famer Jason Taylor.
Is he the
for
son
Miami.
of his nephew? I got confused.
Oh, I thought it was his son, but I could be wrong.
Either way, he's related to him.
Yeah. He's just really athletic, and I think he was just kind of coming into his own this year playing tight end. Like he's been the guy for LSU for like the last few years, but it felt like he started to like really take off this year. Yeah. Where he was going to be that Travis Kelce type of tight end, or at least has the potential to be, because he's like 6'5", 260, runs incredibly well. What is it?
He is the son of Pro Football Hall of Famer Jason Taylor. So yeah, I don't know why I was mixed up.
But if you were like going to go for like a modern NFL tight end where you're going to use him a lot in the passing game, you're going to do a lot of little creative stuff to get him isolated on a linebacker. Like he's got all the talent you could ever want to be like a star tight end in the league. He's very Jimmy Graham-esque. Like that's the type of athlete he is. Now, I know that's kind of a lofty comparison, but that's kind of the offense I could see him really doing well in. Like if Sean Payton were still in New Orleans, he'd be a Saint in round 2.
Yeah.
With their tight end need. I'm not a big Harold Fannin Jr. fan. I don't know what it is. When I watch him, he seems a little stiff to me, like in the hips.
Well, he has a funny gait. He's like pigeon-toed or something. Like he has a funny running style.
Yeah, he doesn't strike me as someone that's ever going to be like running away from people. Like there's always going to be someone like on top of him. And he's a good player. I'm not trying to take that away from him, but I've never seen like impact NFL player for him. So that just drops him farther down my list. Rondé Gadsden's another, kind of modern NFL tight end where it's like with the right offensive system and coordinator, watch out. He's going to put up big numbers. He's going to be an absolute nightmare
Really
to
good
cover.
receiver. I mean, he's a big slot, and just very good at it. Nothing wrong with that,
And
except
then,
for not in Pittsburgh.
Last two guys I'll say really quickly. I think Jake Brenningstool from Clemson's going to have a pretty long NFL career. Very big, very athletic type of guy. Is willing to, punch his weight in the run game, even though they didn't ask him to do a ton of that, but he's surprisingly nimble and quick for a guy his size. And tight ends, make linebackers, really regret it sometimes. And then, it's kind of a broken record here, but Luke Lachey from Iowa is a pretty talented tight end that has had pretty shitty quarterback play his entire career that will probably go into the NFL and probably be a pretty damn good player for someone as like a second or third tight end. I don't think he'll ever be a tight end number one.
So wait, you're telling me there's a tight end from Iowa who might be a good NFL player?
What?
That's weird. That's really strange.
And I'll cut it off there.
Nice. Corey.
I think Mitchell Evans is intriguing, not really for us, but I think like he might be pretty solid.
He's on there. Okay.
I am all over Malik Carr. If I wasn't doing my little Corey's social network draft a team, Malik Carr would have ended up a tight end for my team. But yeah, I'm not really enamored with this tight end class. I like Arroyo. I think he'll go too high for us.
That's so to me, it's like, I feel like, are we in agreement that we're probably not going to tight end in the first half of the draft? Because that feels like
it's just
not enough.
I know we did bring Luke Lackey.
It's true. What would you say, Jeremy? Sorry.
I am pretty positive that Luke Lackey came in for a visit.
Yeah.
For Pittsburgh. So
yeah, he's probably a 6 or 7
late round. So, late round guy. But
so that's what I think. I feel like we're picking somebody, 6 or 7 maybe. But I don't know, Jeremy. Have you seen? I have a feeling. I feel like what we should do is I should send you guys. We should all end up with homework. Like we don't have any time for that. Everybody got to go to work and all that stuff. But in real life, I'd be like, when we get to our short list, I feel like anybody that you're not really that familiar with, like you should look at overnight so that when we get to tomorrow, you'll be like, oh yeah, I see what you guys were saying, or you guys are crazy. Because if you're not that familiar with Malik Carr, you kind of have to see him in action. It's hard to describe. I'm gonna throw out a revered name. You guys are really too young, but Eric Green was like a tight end that was so far ahead of his time. He was just like, better example. You guys ever seen highlights of like Levon Kirkland? Do you remember that era of Steelers? Right?
I've seen that. Yeah.
So Levon Kirkland was like the linebacker that was too big, and he was still like covering guys in cover 2 down the middle of the field, and you were just like, how can he be giant and still carrying guys down the field? He was just one of those cats. That's what Malik Carr is like. You're kind of like, how can that guy be so big and so fast and athletic, and nobody is talking about him really? Like, it's a weird thing. So yeah, I feel like also in the context of this group that we're drafting against, there's not that many people hip to Malik Carr. If they're hip to him, it's only because I drafted him in the Steelers, board draft, and he was drafted and drafted team. And so like they will have heard the name, but I will bet you that not one of them knew who that guy was when the drafting process started. So there's a good chance he's available late to us, so if we're going to, maybe hold out late pick for a tight end, I would sooner do that than draft a quarterback that I don't think can be more than a backup. So that's sort of where I feel like. Let's make linebacker quick because I don't really see us drafting a linebacker. There are so many in this class that are great though. Like it's such a shame to have Patrick Queen clogging up the middle of your defense and being like not really a good Mac and not really a good Buck, but enough of a contract that he gets the green dot and he stays on the field. So you can't win. And even Peyton Wilson, showed some things as a rookie. The jury is out for me as to whether or not he can be the coverage backer that they really need. I'm halfway thinking that who's the guy that was injured last year? Who started middle
Holcomb.
linebacker for the Steelers
Holcomb.
last year was hurt. Yeah, that Cole. I have in mind to think that Cole Holcomb will be wearing the green dot and being their leader at linebacker by the time the season's halfway over, because he's still the best linebacker that they have if he's healthy. So anyway, I don't know what that means, what they'll add, but I don't know. I'll go last on this one. Corey, how about you for linebackers? I know you like
Danny
Smell.
Stutzman.
Yeah,
Yep.
you like Miss Danny Stutzman because he's also your buddy. You play poker with him or something, right?
My parents used to play poker with his parents every night, so we had a very extended childhood together.
Wait. Do you know that I was just riffing, making that up off the
Are you
top of my
serious?
head?
Oh no, yeah,
I did not know that.
He was on my flag football team, which prompted a poker, a running poker game for years. So from like kindergarten till 8th grade, we spent a lot of weekends together. That ran into about 4 a.m. Then he played for a high school that was around me too. And fun fact, he was actually a receiver for a Legacy High School, this little Christian school. He's a receiver and a safety, and he destroyed us at receiver. We had good DBs, and he just whacked. And then he goes to Oklahoma, and he bulks up to a edge kind of player his first year, then goes off ball. He's going to be able to cover. He's got pretty good speed, even though you wouldn't necessarily expect it with the last name Stutzman and how he looks and talks with the hook nose and everything, the Sooner allegiance. But yeah, no, he's a lot better athlete than I think people give him credit for. I think that's the one thing. He's going to be a lot better in pass coverage than people think, which is going to be where a lot of his value comes from, because a lot of these dudes can stop the run.
Yeah. Anybody else? Well, Jeremy, what are you actually just quickly of the later guys, Corey? So let's talk about, once again, 6 and 7. Anybody in there jump out to you? Do you like JDJ?
I do. I like JDJ. He's kind of Mark Robinson-y, where he's explosive. I don't know how much legitimate linebackering he's going to do for you throughout, but if we're talking 6th and 7th, I think there's a hell of a lot worse start throws you could throw. Jay Higgins, actually, I know he's not fast, but neither is like TJ Edwards for the Eagles. It's dudes with instincts and who do everything else right and look like they're moving faster than they're 40 on the football field. Those guys, they play in the NFL. You don't see all these 4-3, 4-4 linebackers running around in the NFL. Those dudes who run 4-6, 4-7 with instincts are the ones who play for 10 years. So,
but also, like, from the analytics standpoint, the guys who are in the 4.2s and lower in the short shuttle that play linebacker are head and shoulders have more chance of success than it doesn't matter. Their 40 time doesn't matter to me that much.
It's not a flashy pick. People would be up in arms about it, but I'm pretty confident he's going to be a legit player. I mean, the film's good. I wouldn't have thought he was going to run that slow.
What about you, Jeremy?
Late. I like Jackson Woodard. I think it's the UNLV kid.
Another slow guy. I love Jackson Woodard as well. Totally disappointed and shocked at his pro day.
Yeah, he kind of reminded me a little bit of Logan Wilson from Wyoming, just in the fact that he's got a nose for the football. He drops in coverage and looks pretty decent doing it.
He's better than that. Sorry, I can't let that go. He was so good at knocking the ball away without committing a foul. Like, he would be like, and guys that would normally they catch the ball and get tackled, he was making plays and knocking the ball out. So that's all I want to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, Nick Jackson, Iowa, another kind of well-rounded, not super athletic kid, but knows what to do on a football field.
No, crazy athletic in real life. A sub-4 short shuttle, which maybe seen that once or twice in 10 years, which is incredible to me because, as you said, you would think he's the non-athletic guy it was so weird because Jay Higgins was playing coverage and he was the slow, unathletic guy. And Nick Jackson's like the athletic guy, and he was playing downhill. It was weird, but I really I picked him to draft team. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah. The one thing I will say about this year's linebacker crew, like outside of Jihad Campbell and, some of these like really athletic guys like a Jeffrey Bassa, who's, a converted safety coming down, played linebacker for Oregon. I think a lot of these guys are going to be 2-down linebackers in the NFL. They are going to really struggle if good teams isolate them in coverage, just because they're not as quick as the slot receivers and tight ends that they're going to see on a week in, week out basis. But that doesn't mean they're not good players.
Yeah.
There's just not. There are very few 3-down linebackers in this class, if you ask me. So, like, a lot of these guys are green for me, but like they're green like starting in rounds 5, 6, and 7.
Right.
Like that they just can't. If you can't stay on the field, you're just not going to get drafted early enough to make a huge impact. I'm not saying that there haven't been players that have found a way to do it. I mean, Vince Williams, for as good as he was in the run game, actually performed very admirably for the Steelers in pass coverage. So that there are definitely opportunities for these guys to still make plays, but if they're going up against a wide receiver, they're going to be in trouble.
Well, same with the Landon Roberts, a guy that
sure,
never going to be known as a coverage guy, but man, he made some plays in coverage.
He did.
They just limited they limited his assignments, right? So he wasn't trying to cover wide receivers. I just want to say quickly that I think Jihad Campbell and Carson Schwetzinger are maybe the two best linebacker prospects off the top of my head I can think of. I mean, in several years, I'm trying to remember who with some of the ones that came in the last few years. Like, I would say they have a chance. They both have especially Campbell, I think, has a chance to be like one of those, top 3 in the league linebackers, like we talk about Fred Warner. So I think both those guys are super talented. But yeah, not in the Steelers cards this year, guys. Sorry. What was I going to say? Oh, shockingly, you segued into the thing I wanted to say about the coverage. That's if your ability to cover is really going to give you a shot. I think if you draft a linebacker for the Steelers in the 6th or 7th round, you're drafting them because you think they're going to be on your special teams and they're going to back up at a position. But to get on the field beyond that, I think they got to be able to do something. They'll be able to cover. They'd be an amazing downhill player, whatever. You're going to laugh. Carson Bruner, son of Mark Bruner, former Steelers tight end, might have been as good a cover linebacker as I saw in the entire draft. I was shocked because, it's like I so hate the nepotism and the drafting of, the Hayward brothers and, the Dino Tomlin's friends from Maryland and whatever. But I was pleasantly shocked that Carson Bruner, I thought, was actually a really good football player. And I think he would be a perfect, if you're going to add a linebacker late, he's a perfect guy to add because he has skills in coverage that your other linebackers don't have. And I think he'd be an immediate contributor on special teams. Corey, linebackers.
Not the only say
Oh,
white
no,
linebackers.
you actually already did Danny Stutzman.
I did Stutzman. I will shout out Sean Dolak, who tested
there you
better
go.
than people would imagine.
He will be just intel. He will be overdrafted by about 2 rounds. Sean Dolak and Chris Paul will be drafted 2 rounds or a round earlier than you would ever think they would go. This is a crew that is a very Buffalo centric. Dolak played in Buffalo, and Chris Paul was on, Jim's show, and so those 2 guys are going to go super early. Sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. Did you mean to pass me off to safeties or?
Sure. Let's get into it. I think safeties this class of safeties is weird. They're, if you're going to add a player to Pittsburgh, I felt like Deshaun Elliott was the best safety that they had on the roster. He's one of the best defensive, best guy in the defensive backfield at least. So, and the other guy's Minkah Fitzpatrick. Like, what are you adding?
If at some point, like one of these and there's not too many of them, but like the Obi Melanfonwu, Nick Emanwari, like one of these dudes pan out, it's going to be pretty absurd because you're going to have that kind of talent roaming center field. But I'm not going to pretend to know. We're not going to draft him, and I'm not going to pretend to know if he's the one that finally breaks the curb. Makuba played really well out of the slot this year. I didn't like him at Clemson. I did like him a lot more at Texas. Um, I gotta shout my guy out, and I don't know him personally. This is not a Corey personal question, but Malik Verdon. He was
Yes.
probably Jeremy, you don't even know the Malik Verdon story with me. Will
I
knows
don't.
this thing goes back to fucking 2021. So
Ooh, okay.
back when he was in his first year of playing, there's this freshman safety who just keeps popping off the screen, and I'm like, Will, like this guy would be safety number 1 in this draft. I'm like, he's a stud. Just wait till he comes out. Then since that text, he maybe has played in 40% of his snaps that he could have played in. Like he just cannot stay on the field. But when he's going, like when he is, I'd put him up in the top 3 if you could guarantee me health without a second thought. He's electric when he is fully healthy.
He's awesome.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, Verdon was a guy that got sniped in draft a team. Like he was going to be my next pick and literally went the pick before me. And that was probably one of those texts I sent to you, Will, where it had a big long list of expletives afterwards because I thought this is the kid I've been waiting for this whole time. But Verdon's really good. I think I was going to draft him as like my flex on defense because like he's 6'4", 220. You know, it's like he can play some nickel linebacker and still create some havoc in coverage.
And he'll come downhill. He'll take on blocks like that.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit of the reason he can't fucking stay on the field. But if there's a pulling guard, he that shoulder's going in the rib cage.
But he strikes me as a little bit like who's a guy that I like that went to New England that played at Sacramento State.
Marte
Mapu. He strikes me as like a little bit of that style player, right?
Yeah.
I think if you're looking for somebody that's like this is why I say, as far as for this exercise, if you're looking for somebody to play closer to the box, I feel like that, you know, who can play split safety, but like you really want him like close to the action. I feel like that's a really good choice.
One name on here, it seems like we've talked a lot of South Carolina players tonight, but O'Donnell Fortune for South Carolina.
Yeah.
I had visions of drafting him as my free safety in draft a team because
he's going to be a safety in the league. Definitely.
Yeah, he sees the field so well, and he was playing, you know, zone corner because he's just not like fast enough to play like man on man consistently. But you know, he was a guy that was playing 10 yards off his receiver, but could make up the ground and go get the pick. Like I think he had 9 picks in his career at South Carolina, like 5 of them coming this year. Yeah. Absolute ball hawk, has no problem like coming and helping with the run. So that's a guy that I was just like shocked that I haven't heard much about. And it's just because was kind of buried on like this really good South Carolina team.
He was the MVP of the Shrine Bowl, I think. So
was he? Okay.
He had a pick 6 in the beginning of the game.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it was like that. They played a lot of cover 3 and quarters, and so they play cover 3 normally, and then when it was unbalanced, then they played quarters on the backside, and he was always like one of those guys. Very good at that.
Yeah. Kind of 2 last things. Billy Bowman, he's a lot of fun to watch. He just throws his body around. It's fantastic.
Just
the way he plays the game.
You know who he's a carbon copy of is that and I get they have the similar hair, but like the play style is so similar. Is Sidney Brown? That twitched up ball of muscle who just is rocking dudes and flying around.
Yeah, I mean,
sorry.
I was just going to say I just don't see it early for the Steelers. But go ahead.
Oh no, too early.
Last guy, and I've liked him for the last 2 years, Kevin Winston Jr. I think he's more of like a classic strong safety type. You know, he's not like superb in coverage, but he does come down quickly and helps out in the run game a lot. He's decent in coverage too. You know, he's not great by any means, but I think he's more than good enough to do it pretty well. I was trying to think of Penn State safety from like 2 years ago that's on Chicago now? Does anyone remember?
Brisker.
Yeah.
Brisker. He reminds me of Brisker in the sense that he's just a good all around football player that's going to come down and make you pay for every single catch you get in front of him.
Yeah,
so.
I thought both their safeties at Penn State were good.
Yeah, Reed's good too. Reed's good too.
I'll just say I think you guys have pretty much nailed it. I'm just not convinced I know what the Steelers' need is. Like, what would make their team better? Like, they're playing their all-star free safety, their all-pro guy, 30 yards off the line of scrimmage. So right away, it's like, what is it that you're looking for? Like, if I were in the front office, I would literally have to be like have a seminar from the defensive coaches to explain to me what they're looking for, because it's not obvious to me. I feel like on one hand, like, they have good players at safety, but they also don't really let them make very many plays. It's very strange. But I thought that I love the idea of a Malik Verdon and a bigger guy playing closer to the box. But I kind of feel like they're either going to add a safety that can play either more center field or is more of a coverage guy. So he can, if you want to play Minkah Fitzpatrick closer to the line, he's somebody that can play some deep half or deep or single high. Or you have a safety that can basically be your nickel. I think that's really the fit, more than like, no, I'm not saying that Malik Verdon can't do that, but to me, I know immediately if you are a safety type who's very physical and is capable of playing in the slot against any kind of receiver there, and is capable of playing solid tackler against the run and can defeat blockers to make plays against the run, then you can be my nickel. That's why the list of nickels that I put up there is short, because I'm very particular about like what it is that I'm looking for in a nickel, and I feel that's a really important position now in the NFL. The NFL is starting to catch up to this concept.
Finally.
But I would say, as far as the people listed under safety right here, Takreese Bridges is an interesting guy. I don't know him that well. I'm not familiar with. I don't remember. I've watched Florida games, but I didn't really notice him. But the guy that I hate to agree with Mel Kiper, but J.J. Roberts, I guess, is Mel Kiper's sleeper this year. Like he's been raving about him for several weeks, and apparently, don't quote me, I think it was Belichick who was talking with Mel Kiper and was the one that was like touting J.J. Roberts. But Roberts,
where does he play?
Marshall, I want to say, right? Isn't that where J.J. Roberts is? Yeah, Marshall. But he is as good a coverage safety, like first of all, center fielder thing got down. He's the kind of center fielder that has an incredible catch radius and the ability to like high point the football. So if you throw a post with him in the middle of the field, or even sometimes with him being on the other side of the field, if it's not on a rope, he's going to go up and make a play that's better than almost any wide receiver that you're going to have make a play against him. So I love that aspect to his game. He was also very physical. You don't often find guys that play deep safety who are very physical in the run game. And this is something that's very important, because this is something you won't get with maybe Billy Bowman, who has a similar kind of like, go for it attitude all the time. He's an incredibly good and dependable tackler. So you see him make a lot of open field tackles without any kind of fuss. He's not worried about knocking guys out. He's just making a play. And I feel like that's a real Steelers kind of safety. So somebody for you guys to check out if you don't know him that well, that I heartily endorse. If he really is available late in the draft, that's a no-brainer to me. I'll go into nickel, since I'm the one with like the super crazy nickel thing. I love Jahdae Barron. I just don't think you're going to draft a nickel corner in the first round. Yes, he can play outside for you. So can the next guy I'm about to talk about. But he was terrific last year. He's kind of Corey's dude. But I just don't see them drafting. They barely value the nickel. They let the best nickel they've had in decades go for they wouldn't even pay him an extra.
They won't even
dollar.
draft one.
Yeah, I don't know. So I don't really understand what they're after, but me personally, I feel like it's a huge hole in their defense right now. I thought the Beanie Bishop did some things well, and the guy they brought from the Jets is okay. But yeah, I think if you have a stud player there, you love life. It makes a lot of things on your defense easier. It makes it a hell
Just
of a
ask. Sorry, just ask the Philadelphia Eagles how Cooper DeJean worked out.
yeah. Well, the thing is, if you got a guy at nickel that can make plays, then suddenly it's like you're not as easy to run on a nickel. You can't get mismatches all the time. You can't outrun them. It's like you got to have a guy that has some juice there. I think Kobe Bryant is probably, with apologies to Jahdae Barron, I think Kobe Bryant might be the best nickel in this class. Somebody might draft him as an outside corner, and I believe that if you had an injury or something and you needed him to play out there, he would be very good at it. But you look at him, he doesn't look super sturdy. He plays like a 250-pound linebacker. He is extremely physical coming downhill. If you run a screen to his side, he is beating blockers and making the play. He did it over and over and over again. Coverage skills, his ability to stick to guys and make plays on the ball are also excellent, and ball skills very, very good. So he's a guy that I think is the top guy. I have a feeling he's going to go higher than expected. Therefore, it's like we'll be faced with a choice of either overdrafting a guy like that to make sure that we get him, or looking at the next thing down the field. And I just, I'll say Ethan Robinson is a guy that won't be drafted, but is very physical, made as many plays. He had as many splash plays as any corner in college football, including Travis Hunter. He had an amazing season in obscurity in Minnesota. And probably also was like, one of the 5 guys in the city who were not white. Major Williams from Carson Newman would be a guy I think we should consider targeting if we're determined to get a nickel corner and we want to get somebody like that late. I fully endorse him. Another incredibly productive player. Yes, he's somebody that played D2 his whole career, or the second half of his career. I think he played even below that earlier for a year until he realized he was too good for D3 or whatever. But I was shocked to learn how many D2 players are playing in the NFL, and particularly how many defensive backs from D2 are in the league. I don't know if you guys know this. I think there were 13 last year out of, so what is that? Maybe there's 10 on each team, 320. 13 D2 players out of 320 defensive backs in the league is actually a pretty healthy percentage. He could play any safety position. I would like him as a nickel because I feel like he offers that combination of physical play, can cover big and small, so he can back up in if you want to send him back and disguise your coverage and drop him off the line. He's capable of doing that. Another really great tackler, very physical player. So those are my endorsements for a position that I'm super into, trying to find a good player at low cost, because I know the Steelers really won't spend a top pick.
I'll hop in quick. Actually, one more thing really quick on Jahdae Barron. It was the same thing I said about Cam Ward last year. I was going insane talking to Will. I said, I have no clue why Jahdae Barron is being talked about as a 6th and 7th rounder on everything there is. I'm like, dude's a stud. He's probably a top 3 nickel available in the entire draft. And let's just leave it at that. I've gone on that soapbox a couple times. I'll shout out Sebastian Castro. I feel like shouting him out I feel like that's a guy the Steelers will actually look at targeting, which I feel like he'd be an upgrade over Beanie Bishop. I like Beanie Bishop. I think he gives you a little more short area quickness and a little more aggression in the run than Beanie Bishop gave you, which, like, Beanie Bishop was an outside guy who was physical, who you moved in. He wasn't really a nickel. Sebastian Castro has that nickel run fit kind of mentality over Beanie, where I think, at least with what the Steelers want to do, he'll fit a little better.
Boy, did he have a good Senior Bowl. He was one of the few cats that, in that completely asinine drill they do where it's one-on-one with a receiver that has no real route, he's just getting open one-on-one.
Yeah.
Defensive backs have no chance. And he was one of like 2 or 3 guys there on defense who were like, didn't give up anything.
his feet are fucking quick. Like
Yeah.
he has light feet. So that's a guy I think not only for, the Steelers will like him in real life. I think that's just a guy who fits what we're going to be looking for.
How about you, Jeremy?
I like Dorian Strong, very quick dude. Who I think can play some outside corner too, but nickel's not a stretch by any means. That he's very quick, pretty good against the run. Shamari Simmons, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know a whole lot about him, and then he just really showed up in a big way during the playoffs this year, where it was like, damn, that is an athlete that could really make an impact at safety or slot. And then
good football player, man.
Yeah, just good football player.
He was good on the outside. He was good as an outside corner, really.
Yeah, just one of those like athletes that you're just like, you're happy he's on your team. Like we will find a place for you, son. Last one, I will go with a guy that I took and drafted team that I have just watched a ton on recently, who I think could actually have a pretty productive career in the NFL. And it's not because he's the brother of a deceased awesome player.
Oh, yeah.
But Gabriel Taylor from Rice has some serious versatility as a safety / nickel cornerback. He has 10 career interceptions. He hits way bigger than what he profiles at. He is a 5'10", 190-pound player, and he supposedly ran and tested pretty well at his pro day. I don't have the numbers, but
I don't either. Yeah, I was just going to say.
But I was reading an article that he really turned some heads at his pro day, and if there was a player I would like kind of bet money on that's probably going to go undrafted but end up making a pretty solid contribution for an NFL team, it's Gabriel Taylor from Rice.
Cool. Yeah, I remember when you picked him in the draft team, I was like, I didn't even realize he was in the draft. So
yeah,
good for him.
If you fool Will, you've done a good job.
Yeah. Well, I mean, shit. There were a couple. I mean, I think the first player in drafted team I didn't recognize was like pick 400-ish. So yeah, I mean, I don't know them all, but I've seen the names and I entered them all in the sheet. So
sure.
Yep.
But I like him a lot. So
cool. Well, I feel like does it not feel like there are a ton of guys at nickel that would be an upgrade? Like, I think we're going to be in pretty good shape on nickels. Because we didn't even mention Jalen Smith or Davian Ross. Donovan McMillan, like those cats can all play, man. Upton Stout was good at the Senior Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like this is a bit of a, like, you could pick one of those guys out of a hat and it would be something anyway. So that'll just be a question of like who we feel like drafting probably, or who's available when we're ready. Corner, we said on the show last night that we think that is it Slay they got, right? I'm talking.
Yeah, got Darius Slay, then signed
right
Brandon
at this
Echols.
point of hours of talking about the Steelers and football, bro. I'm starting to, it's all blending together. But yeah, so Darius Slay, we said last night we thought, maybe has 3 years at playing at a fairly high level, but they don't have much behind him at outside corner. They're, it's a big risk to go into it thinking that Corey Trice is going to be, the up and coming corner or whatever. So
yeah, I think Brandon Echols is going to play outside corner too.
Okay. Yeah, I thought he was going to play nickel, but yeah.
Well, so he's one of those guys that I actually listened to an interview, and I wanted to bring it up last night when we were talking about it, so I'm going to do it here. Okay. He says he views himself as an outside corner that can play nickel. So I think you could see him do both.
I honestly,
and he played pretty well last year.
I kind of like when my nickel says, "No, I'm a nickel. I want to play the run." Like I'm looking to crack skulls and stuff because those outside guys who are like, "Oh, I play nickel," those guys aren't necessarily headhunters.
I just feel like you got to have a different kind of mentality to be a sub 200 guy, sub 200-pound guy. If, going to war with in the offensive line and the. And
you got to set the edge sometimes.
I know, it's like, man, you got to be ferocious to play that role at that size. And that, like you see Mike Hilton, of course we're going to keep holding him up as or Brian Branch, like dudes like that, man. You just I admire their courage. If I had no other better way to say it, it's like he's just a special character. That's why I say, when I'm looking at these players for slot, I'm not looking. I used to look at guys. He's like a jitterbug. He's good at the short area quickness and whatever. But I realized that there's just so much more physicality to nickelback. I was talking with somebody at a party once who was he played nickel for Temple back in the day. And he was maybe a year out of school or something like that. And he was built like a linebacker. And I was just like, man, you must have been like pretty big for a nickel. And he was like, I think you got to be big to play nickel, man. That's it's a physical job and you're banging with big dudes. And I was like, yeah, I guess maybe, it's like we think, oh, this guy's not big enough to play on the outside. We're going to kick him inside, is old mentality,
Yep.
Well, maybe I'll start with corners because
I'll knock mine two out because mine.
Yeah, you go ahead, man. I barely know where to go with this class. I have an idea, but
I'll talk about, these are two Korey guys, Korey social network guys, and I actually think the Steelers are going to be interested in them simply because of the profiles they've targeted lately. It's Tommy Hill and Zy Alexander. Tommy Hill is the one who went viral for pick sixing Shador earlier in the year. And then had one of the worst Senior Bowl reps I've ever seen, and looked like we're stuck in mud. I did.
Foot injury was the word.
Yes, I did hear that he was injured from some sources. So that's
not a good look.
Not something you should take too much credit for. But if you have any injuries, probably would have been best to not do the one-on-ones. But he's former legit receiver. Like, he was getting recruited at receiver for DB, and he decided he wanted to play DB in college. So super lengthy, good ball skills. You can kind of tell when the ball's up in the air. Lacks a little long speed. Me and Will kind of bounced around him playing some safety when it was earlier in the season. I don't know if he has the, if he comes downhill necessarily hard enough, but big corner. And then Zy I played with for multiple years at Southeastern Louisiana. Super good feet. I think he would have really blown up if he didn't have his ACL injury, where he got injured last year. And Zy, he's super light feet. He's again, he played quarterback and receiver in high school as a converted offensive guy. Starting to see that become more common with DBs nowadays. But that's just one of those guys. He's lengthy, still probably got some development. I could see the Steelers being into both of those guys just because of their size profile and their length. And, those are two guys just kind of keeping on. Not necessarily guys I'm like banging on the table for in this exercise, but, guys who they will see as like, oh, that's a good fit behind Slayer Porter.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. Tommy Hill, had the foot injury, so he didn't work out. Ran 4.36, I think, last year. So he's been, he had the speed, and Zy Alexander looked like a guy with speed who had a terrible pro day. Yeah. So, or at least a pro day that wasn't up to what he expected. Let's put it that way. I wouldn't say terrible. That's compared to what I would run at pro day. He was awesome. but yeah, I think he's probably a little bit disappointed in the outcome. So it wasn't bad, but it's like, if you want to try to start at a small school and make your way to the NFL, it helps to not have anything that somebody can point at and be like, oh yeah, well, see, he's not as athletic or whatever. But really, I thought he played great for the first part of the season. As Korey was happy to tell me, he was he was like leading college football in coverage stats.
He gave up 0 yards for the first 7 weeks or something like that. Like he was getting targeted. It was just he's in guys' hip pocket a lot.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Oh yeah, so I guess it's my turn, right? I got to go back to my value board and see what's going on here. By the way, Benjamin Morrison, just since we're talking about players that at one point were really highly touted, people still have him very high. When I watched him last year, I guess he's had 2 major hip injuries, right? He had one, missed time, came back and played, and then got hurt again. I don't know if I have that exactly right, but it's something like that. But he already looked to me earlier this year on his highlight tape. Remember we talked to you last night about like when you can see some on somebody's highlights what's not there. Anytime somebody ran a crossing route, he was not able to flip his hips and go sideways. And that to me is a really big concern. It's a shame because guy's got a lot of great, traits as a corner, and as a very physical player and was part of a good defense and everything. But that struck me as like a real red flag, especially in light of the medical red flag. That's why he's in red, not just for me, but when I mentioned earlier that I got a couple of the skinnies on some people medically, he was one that was mentioned. Chevon Ravel is the same deal. He has knee on knee, more almost like arthritic knees. It's almost exactly the same situation that Darnell Washington had last year coming out. So it's something that he probably can play with, and that may not affect him. But he's also doing a lot more, speed running, and it would affect him more than maybe it would affect Darnell Washington at his position. So that's a shame because I think he's a really good player. And at one point, he was somebody that I thought maybe a pick for the Steelers early before they signed Darius Slay. I would say based on where we're going with this whole thing, that I start looking about the time that Zoff Frazier's on the board. UTSA corner, so he's playing in a league that most people don't really see very much. I saw them quite a bit because at one point they had 5 wide receivers that I thought were all NFL, not only NFL prospects, but all guys that were going to be good in the NFL. And to varying degrees, they have moved on or moved to the NFL and have been pretty good. But yeah, he was there, on the defensive side. He's like that classic, but always somebody like this in the draft. Big dude, runs super fast, relatively, switched to corner late in his career and starts wowing people for a year or so and then comes into the NFL. And it's like, maybe you can take that guy and turn him into, a Richard Sherman or something, or maybe, he just becomes Corey Trice, right? There's always like somebody with a size and speed profile like he has. Somebody's going to draft him as a developmental corner. If that's what the Steelers are looking for, I think he'd be great at that. Beyond that, I don't know that it's a great class. I selected Marcus Harris in the board draft because I felt like he was a little bit underlooked, like for the value of getting somebody late, who had a tremendous season at Cal, transferred in from a smaller school. I've forgotten which one, but he's somebody that I felt like could play inside and out and could be a very good number 2 corner in the league, which I feel like is sort of what they're looking for. But it would be nice to have a corner on the other side who was better than JPJ. And one last guy I'll mention is Isas Waxter from Villanova, I want to say. Another big dude, super great tester, classic lanky outside corner, was very good at the FCS level. Question is, will that translate? But I thought he was really good. He deserved a shot at a bigger All-Star game. I think that was a little bit of a shame. Those are the only guys that I'm really ready to like pound for. But I just want to say, so many of the other guys listed in green, I'd be perfectly happy with.
Yeah. We haven't talked about Darian Porter, but wow, what an athlete.
God, yeah. Well, I just don't think we're gonna get him, but
oh yeah. No, I mean he's a round 2 guy. Honestly, could creep his way into round 1 with how teams are very indecisive about how cornerbacks project to certain schemes and who they like and who they don't like. It wouldn't surprise me because he's such a freak if he were to be that late round, first round corner.
I can see that.
I like every year the NFL has like 1 or maybe 2 consensus top cornerbacks, and then like cornerbacks 3 to 9 are all like, well, they fit my scheme better than your scheme. He's gonna, I think he's gonna be. I'm not saying he will go in the first round, but it won't surprise me one bit if he does, just because that's how kind of random the corner rankings can get from team to team to team.
I mean, let me put you this way, Jeremy. If the Steelers most pressing need was cornerback, I would be like, we're picking him at 21. Like that to me
Yeah,
is
that's fair.
he's
Very
that
fair.
good of a prospect. He is not a finished product, and he's played more zone than man. And I know these days they like to play more man, but yeah, that dude, great tape and tested super the freakiest of the freaky. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, another guy I really like who the Steelers have actually brought in for a visit, Trey Amos. I see a giant ball of clay there, who's just really starting to like kick off his career. He's 6'2", 200 some pounds. I think he tested really well too. Ran the in the 4.4s. I think he was a 4.43. Could be wrong. I don't remember his other testing numbers, but he had the look of someone that it's like, yeah, that's a guy who's keeping up with NFL wide receivers and making plays on the ball. Because it's funny, at Ole Miss, he played so far off the ball because his takedown speed was just that good. Like he knew, like they knew they could get away with playing him that far off the ball, and he would still come down and make a play. So he's a guy. There honestly, there's a lot of guys in green on here that are good. Jacob Parrish, really underrated. Quincy Riley, another just good playmaker. Guys that make plays on the ball. I mean, we've talked about some of these other guys already, so that's kind of where I'll end.
Yeah, I mean,
there.
it's like there's like 3 or 4 guys are just very exciting that are probably going to be out of our price range. It's like we went to the Lamborghini dealership and we were like, really, the cars are super cool, but like we're looking for a F-150, we're shopping in the F-150 price range. Let's put it that way. Corey, what's your take on corners in this class?
I think it's a strong class in the middle. I think it's one of those ones where a lot of dudes you could take from like round 3 to 6, and it'll probably end up you'll end up with a solid guy, which is it's not a bad spot for the Steelers, all things considered, because we're probably not investing high. It's you got some guy like Jabbar Muhammad was talked about pretty highly last year, and that's a guy where like even if you're swinging on a dude who isn't the best performer this year, someone might get a good bounce back out of him. I think Denzel Burke's kind of similar too. I was never really that in on him, but I'm sure some team was.
Just so adverse to tackling. Like he makes Deion Sanders look like a physical player.
But no, it's
really good ball skills in case he covers like a blanket, but yeah, he just doesn't tackle at all. Zero.
It's a strong class throughout the middle, so that's one that's kind of my takeaway of it. I'd rather have a class that's strong in the middle than a class that's really top heavy and it kind of just peters out, or even UDFA heavy.
Yeah, I could see that. But anybody that we didn't talk about that you wanted to add to that list, or you?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay.
I'll throw one more name out there very quickly because I see him now and I like him a lot. Mello Dotson from Kansas. Maybe I've just got a lot of Kansas bias from like all the guys I like from Kansas this year, but he's this 6'1", 190-pound cornerback that made a pretty good living out there breaking up balls, and I think he has something like 7 or 8 career interceptions. So get just another long guy that makes plays if we were going to consider an outside corner.
Right on. Okay. Where we're at the 2.5 hour mark or whatever it is that we 2 and 3/4 hours mark is pretty freaking good for, like I said, teams have a whole staff that does this, for over the course of years, they're slowly building their board. And I think like we got it down to the point where at least it's manageable in my mind. I know it seems crazy. Seems crazy looking at it right now, but it feels manageable to me. I guess one last thing I would like to do tonight, bear in mind, we're going to be together on the podcast. Thursday night, it's round 1. Friday night, it's round 2 and 3. Saturday night, it's rounds 4 through 7. And the thing is, as long as we have a pretty good idea of what our starting strategy is and who we're looking at on a short list for round 1, then I feel
Mhm.
like we have even time tomorrow to refine our plan a little bit, and maybe that's what we should do so that we're not on the air for 4+ hours every night
Mhm.
week. Because I'm crazy, but that's really crazy. So I appreciate you guys being here. But as long as you, everybody okay with that type of strategy? Because
No.
what I was going to say was, I can clean this stuff up and give us some spreadsheets that we can review and work with tomorrow. But what I was about to say was maybe we should just make a short list of like who's our short list at 121
Mm-hmm.
and start to build from there. It feels like we talked about some things that seemed pretty cool later, like uh, a tight end, a nickel corner, um, something else that were like, round 6 and 7. And then talk about a running back maybe in round 4. And there was just sort of a question to me like what we want to do rounds 1 and 3. So let's start off by assuming that we can't trade down and we're just locked into these picks. We can always massage it if we need to do something else, but maybe just overall strategy. Like Jeremy, I'll start with you. If you said to yourself, like, we could come out of the first 3 picks with this, either positions or players that I'd be really happy, what would you say that would be?
Well, we kind of had this conversation a little bit yesterday, but Derek Harmon would be a very safe first round pick for Pittsburgh. I think he just checks a lot of the boxes because he's a Cam Hayward clone. We're not the only ones that have kind of said that. In this
He
pre-draft
really
process.
looks like him. Like
Yeah,
he could be a Hayward brother.
yeah. But he took his game to another level at Oregon for Michigan State, so just feels like he's going to just be this really solid pro. And again, I'm not even sure he's going to be there.
Right, but I guess
with the
more. I was asking the question more right now about like do you think we want to come out of these first 3 picks with like 200-300 pound players? Do we want to come out of it with like what would your if in a perfect scenario, are we focused on trying to get like a defensive lineman and offensive lineman of these first 3 picks? Like what do you feel like the value in the best course of action is to try to improve the Steelers? That's really
I mean, as the board currently sits, we'll pick at 121, 383, and 123. I'd for sure be wanting a defensive lineman, probably with one of our first 2 picks, maybe a 4th if we just kind of get screwed out of everyone we thought might be there at pick 383. But I'm definitely thinking a defensive lineman, a wide receiver, and at least a running back at some point early-ish on our day 3 or whatever, because we've talked about it a few times. We don't think Warren should be the guy that carries the offense, but that can do it in a pinch. And what we've talked about several running backs tonight that we think we could say take over more of a heavier load. So those are the 3 top needs. If we're really going to say screw it, we hate the quarterbacks.
Korey, unless you disagree with what Jeremy just said, I more or less agree with him. I feel like it's kind of obvious. These doing the mock simulators and everything don't necessarily help you that much, but I do think I sort of locked into the fact that if you pass up on getting a defensive lineman, the one you really want in round 1, he's not going to be there in round 3. You know what I mean? It's like you're pretty much like, if you say, oh my God, Derek Harmon's gone, and I think I'm gonna, it's a stretch to bring to pick any other defensive lineman here, so I'm gonna take a left tackle, which is a reasonable strategy. They need a left tackle, and it's premium position. But if you do that, it really puts you, in my experience, of drafting with real life people and also in simulators that are closer to people. That feels like you're just going to miss out. You just have to be, you're going to be lucky. You feel lucky to get both, and it's probably more likely to get a left tackle you like in the third round rather than depending on trying to get a starting defensive tackle in round 3.
Mm-hmm.
Even as good as the class is, it's very hyped up. Everybody in this exercise is thinking to themselves, you know, they love the defensive tackles, and so they're all going to take one right away. That's what I think is going to happen. But how about this? What I was going to say was, since we're going to try to wrap this up pretty soon, maybe just give me, you know, like Well, first of all, who are the obvious players that if they're on the board, even though we're not thinking they're going to be available to us, we just run to the. I mean, is there somebody besides the top 3 of Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, and Abdul Carter that if they
cheating to count Will Johnson? Because I never thought he'd make it to 15 in the Steelers Fury.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say I would definitely consider that.
I would take Will Johnson without blinking, even if it bumps Darius Slay out. That BPA would be too strong in my opinion.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And what about you, Jeremy? Any other? Just like I said, I have a name I'm going to throw out in a second, but you guys.
So I will say this. You know, earlier this year I said there were only 3 guys I would really trade up for. It'd be Cam Ward, Mason Graham, and Tet McMillan. So those would be the only 3 guys that I would trade up for. So those would be the 3 guys. If somehow one of them got to 121, I'd be like, do we even have to think about this?
Yeah. Oh, I'm just saying, like, Mason Graham, not a perfect prospect. Really productive college player. Like a great college player. But this is where you get into, like, will it translate?
Mm-hmm.
The lack of length is one thing, but the thing that worries me more is that he had almost all his success as like a one tech. Mm-hmm. You know, he wasn't really somebody that moved around a lot. It was like he found this niche that he was really good at, and he dominated from there. So that's okay, but it you know, like if Keanu Benton is your number 3, he's your 3rd best defensive lineman, you're pushing him in a way that, you know, you don't necessarily. I don't know what you're going to get out of him if he doesn't play the role that he succeeded at. So
sure.
Because I do feel like
he's just a game wrecker
in certain roles than others. That's all I was going to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mason Graham, a great player. So no argument. I am going to say the only 2 other players that I would even consider drafting. Well, I shouldn't say it. I'll say 3. And this is the name I'm going to throw up there, which is Deion Walker. I think he's gone.
That would rock that draft.
Well, by the way, in the first time with Jim's crew that I was one of the people in the chat who was picking for the Steelers. Like everybody in the chat's like picking for some team, and you're more or less volunteering to like pick without, you know, being on the air. I picked Deion Walker first. The 2 hosts absolutely belittled the deal. Like one of them was Bill Sparks, who picked and drafted a team with us. And they were just talking about how, you know, everything they hated about him. And I feel this way. I have yet to be in one of these exercises where he makes it to 83. Mm-hmm. So it's like you're either going to take the home run swing in round 1, unless you got to trade down. He's a perfect guy if you trade down. If you trade down to the end of 1 or early in round 2, then nobody's going to bat an eyeball at that pick. In fact, you might even risk losing him if you move down to far enough in 2. But it's like everybody wants to badmouth him, but then suddenly it's like this big, you know, dude who dominated in the SEC, who's not really like anybody else in this draft class. He's a little bit like Alfred Collins. He's a little bit like some of the, you know, smaller players who have a similar role and whatever, but there's nobody exactly like him. So I would like to say that he's on the short list. Am I missing anybody that, aside from, you know, Cam Ward falls, we're trading up.
And
we're trading TJ Watt and a future first round pick to get Cam Ward if he falls past 3. Just tell you right now.
Yeah. So just a fun little anecdote, really quick on Deion Walker. At the Senior Bowl this year, he said he models his game after your Pittsburgh Steelers, Cameron Hayward. So,
yeah.
I might be missing something, Will. I don't see Jalen Milroe on there.
Oh boy. Huh. I wonder why.
I will mention this. What happens if Genty does get to us?
Oof.
Yeah, that's what I
No.
figured. I just
No.
because we didn't say a word about him, I wanted to make sure we were all squared
He's
away.
he's a really good player. No one's going to take that away from him.
Well,
but this is the deepest running back class on God's green earth in 2 decades almost.
I mean, Corey, you can attest to the fact that like week 1 of last year,
Number 1 Genty fan.
yeah, the week 1 of last year, I was like, these 2 running backs for Boise State are really good, and especially this guy that's like a sophomore or whatever he was. I was just like, once again playing in the mountain time zone. Nobody knows who they are, but yeah, that dude's a really good player. I have maybe a little bit of prospect fatigue on him. I've now reached a point where I'm worried about some of the things that did not go as well for him that to go along with the legend. Yeah, he was breaking out in the open and he was running for touchdowns like every game multiple times. So like, it's easy to see that and say, okay, well, that guy's a really good running back. I worry a little bit that when he played against some better teams that, he got stuck a little bit and didn't necessarily dominate in the same way. So I looked at some of the guys who had played better competition and had more success against it. Like I said, those dudes playing in the SEC that put up giant numbers and scored a shitload of touchdowns, and that I could convince myself that they're a much better value in round 4 or 5 than he is in the middle of round 1 or whatever he's going to go. So
let me float this as a secondary similar situation. Let's say, because none of us are in love with the 4 consensus tackles, at least. Let's say it's Harmon, Graham, Kenneth Grant, Tyleik Williams, all gone, and Tyler Warren gets to us. Is that more of a compensation or no?
No,
it doesn't move it. It doesn't move the needle for me enough. I mean, I'm all about picking BPAs that aren't necessarily just a big need, but no, I mean, within his role, I think he's somebody, once again, I always talk about this, transcendent players versus, talented players who are scheme dependent or players that, can be good in multiple schemes or whatever. But I think Tyler Warren is he is more scheme dependent. He's more dependent upon you making plays for him than him necessarily just defeating guys and in any scheme.
Not it's not the greatest example because he has not had the NFL career people thought, but like Kyle Pitts was an example of a tight end who just made shit happen. Like Warren's just wasn't on that level.
Yeah. Or the guy who was the rookie of the year last year. I mean, there's a dude that was just like,
Bowers is phenomenal.
Yeah, Bowers was just going to work no matter.
You get the ball in his hands, he's going to get you something.
He went to a team where prospects go to die and was the rookie of the year. You know what I mean?
Yeah, found a way to.
He transcended any. That's the thing, man. If you're good enough, you can transcend any situation, and I think that's a perfect example. I guess we don't need to think a lot about what we do in round. So if we don't have a round 2 pick, but I guess I would say if we pick one of those guys in round 1, so that looks like 1 corner and then a lot of offense and defensive line. So that feels about the right ratio for who should be on our short list. So that to me means when you get to round 3, that you're looking for a wide receiver who fell. Like if Savion Williams is there,
we're sprinting.
We're sprinting to the podium, right?
Yeah.
If Charles Grant is there.
So okay, I will ask. Let's say we get Harmon. Is it Williams or Grant?
I mean,
That's the conversation that we don't need to make this decision now.
Yeah, I think that's a really tough one. I'll be honest.
Yeah,
that'd be a really, really tough one. I'm inclined to say they're as good as I think Charles Grant is going to be. I don't know. It's a premium position. I guess I would take the bigger player. I just feel like there are fewer guys who are like Savion Williams later in this class, but there are fewer guys like Charles Grant who come out every year. So they'd be either one would be a good choice, I guess. I suspect Williams won't make it. I know that There are a couple of big fans of his in this draft class. So, I mean, in this draft group that we're competing against.
He's a first round talent in my eyes. It's just
I think so
we could
too.
probably get him in the third.
Yeah. If we're trading, if we end up with a 2 sec, let's just say fantasy world, we trade out of one and we end up with either a late first and a second or something like that, then I think we're still getting one of those guys in that short list plus Savion Williams. Like Williams is the prize we get for trading down. If we were able to trade down, we're going to get either him or Darian, the corner.
I mean,
we're in order. Yeah.
We're in dream world, but like how sick would a trade down where we get like Deion Walker and then Charles Grant and then Savion be? Like just something like that.
To me, it's like that is the goal. Can we get there? Like we have right now, we have interest from Philly. Philly was looking to move up, so that's a possibility. That would take us to 32. We have interest from Buffalo vaguely in trading down to 30, but we would also be swapping out of the third round. So we'd end up with a late first, an early second, and then a fourth, which doesn't necessarily improve our chances of getting the 3 players in question unless we're able to trade either 30 or the early second down. So these are the things that are already in play, and maybe, as it gets closer to our pick, maybe somebody will be more interested. But I think I would call it a 25% chance that we would be able to trade down. And
is there a way we can trade DK Metcalf back for our pick?
No fucking shit. I mean, like, it's just the word. Perch nailed it. Earlier episode, Perch was like, when you're an NFL team, you have 2 kinds of assets. You have salary cap money and you have draft picks. And the goal is you use one or the other to build your team and to keep guys under contract or whatever. And it's like they used a premium pick and the bulk of the salary cap that's not going to TJ Watt. So it's like, okay, like why? If they had signed him as a free agent, I'd have been like, okay, like I get it. That's a good deal. Got to pay for.
But to do both.
Quality, yeah. Giving up both was really a hard deal. So, okay. I think we're in pretty decent shape. In the running back, we have a running back short list. Like, I guess if we're going to target running back at 4.
I mean, I'd say Martinez, Giddens, like
I like Martinez. I think Neal and Harvey are close enough to Giddens where I probably wouldn't take him in the 4th.
Okay.
That's kind of where
that's fair.
Sorry, you wouldn't take which one?
I think Neal and Harvey are close enough players to Giddens that those guys are all probably lumped in the 5th for me. And I doubt Giddens makes it there. And I'm a Giddens fan, but it's a deep class. Like it's hard to go wrong.
I'm pretty sure that Martinez will go before Giddens. To me, it's like we'll be lucky if he makes it to 4.
Yeah.
Like everybody, nobody likes to draft running backs, especially when it's a super deep class. So I think, like, if it's anything like the Steeler Fury board draft, Martinez will be available in round 6. But like, I think this will be a little bit more realistic than that, and probably like I think we'll consider ourselves lucky if Martinez and Giddens are on the board at 123. So then we can decide how to decide later. But I think we made good cases for all 4 of those running backs. That's probably as good a set as we're going to see. So all right. Since we're here and we're almost clear. So if that's let's say we get an offensive and defensive lineman, we managed to trade down and get a second, and we got Savion Williams. This is like our ideal situation. Running back in 4. Then what are we looking at here?
It seemed we had some unanimous. So yeah, nickel. Malik Carr was
Are you in? I mean, I don't know. You're not really in on Malik Carr, Jeremy. So maybe you have homework to do.
I do have homework to do there. Honestly, when you guys said Malik Carr, I was like, shit, is that kid finally draft eligible? Because I had a buddy of mine, Dan, when we were at Indiana football together, that Malik Carr was his freaking dude. He was pounding on the table for him to get him to IU, and ever since then. So in the draft process and this, when you guys kept saying Malik Carr, I was like, Dano's got to be having a laugh. But I have not watched Malik Carr, I won't.
Do this. Let's.
I know he's very athletic.
To appeal Jeremy here, let's put the other Malik at the 7th round, Malik Verdon.
Oh yeah,
That'd be a fun kid.
Okay, so I mean, it's a possibility we're gonna have an extra pick or two. So let's have some things in reserve. And we don't, just because it's a need for everything, it doesn't mean we have to draft it all. At some point, I feel like the day 3 picks, after we get a running back that we like, we could do almost anything. But I suspect that in 5th, what we're going to want to do is pick somebody big again. So either another defensive lineman or an interior offensive lineman.
Someone's going to slip. That's how that 5th round is like a gold mine every single year in these things, where it's like a dude who we see as like a borderline 1st and 2nd rounder. We're like, how the fuck is he still here?
Yeah.
Right.
Here's what I would say, just to make it brief. If Deion Walker is our pick in 1, then we want like a three tech who's like super quick, right? Like if we pick Derek Harmon, then I think we want a bigger dude with some juice.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's going to be a little dependent upon what we're able to do earlier will dictate, but I feel like there's going to be somebody awesome in round 5. At either of those big offensive line, defensive line positions, and the rest of it is luxury. It's like whatever we feel like doing. So
especially if we get that opportunity to trade down and maybe pick up some picks or something, that's when this brain trust is going to have a lot of mad fun.
Exactly. All right. So I'm going to make a board. I'm going to make the big board. I'm going to put a highlight reel together. It puts a highlight playlist together for us to get acclimated. Sometimes I just like to have a look at that reel for 2 minutes before I make the pick, because I think I do that almost always. That's a Wil Masisak secret right there. Is I feel like you don't have any buyer's remorse if you have a look and right away, it's like, what, I'd rather have this other guy, or there's something about this that gives me a bad vibe right now. Like I don't want it. So I'm going to put that together just for the hell of it. And it'll be useful. It'll be fun for people to look at that later, but yeah, I'll make a list and we'll revisit this tomorrow. Everybody in here is free to have a different opinion tomorrow if you sleep on it. But yeah, I feel like there's, I feel better about this experience than I did 3 hours ago. So that's good. Thank you guys for getting me through. So that's going to do it for tonight. Oh, sorry, Jeremy, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, so much of it is just going to depend on how the board falls. I mean, that there are guys that we think are going to be there at 383 that get taken like at 240. And we're like, what the hell is he doing taking our guy there and stuff? So much of it's just going to be, just debating on who's there. Everyone views prospects differently. We'll see who's there when we're there.
You got that right. Well, and I think if we're going to be, hell bent on drafting another wide receiver and we lose Savion Williams because we don't have a 2nd round pick, then, that feels like more of a can of worms, but I guess we'll cross that bridge. Maybe we'll start talking about that tomorrow, but good to talk about these things in advance, because this draft is very quick. It's going to go fast compared, even though it's a long night, the picks will go quickly, I think. All right. So on behalf of Korey Karbowsky, Jeremy Kohlman, and Wil Masisak, that's me. This has been our mock draft, not quite the war room, but the pre-war room where we created a Steelers value board. Man, you know more now about potential Steelers prospects than you ever wanted to know. But I got lots of content left for you in the pre-draft extravaganza this week. So tune in tomorrow for round 1 of the draft and our war room. Going to be fun. on behalf of all these people and all of you, Steeler Fury, great to have you. See you on the next episode.
Steeler Fury. SteelerFury.com.